Hey dancers, welcome back to our channel. I'm Julie and I'm the owner and one of the instructors here at Broche Ballet, a ballet school just for adults in Denver, Colorado. Today I want to talk about what does it mean to be graceful. Before we get started, please do make sure that you like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It really does help us out. So, a lot of us come to ballet to be more graceful. I started ballet for precisely that reason. I was the most clumsy person I knew, could not walk upstairs without tripping, still kind of can't, and really wanted to work on my coordination and my grace and just generally how I could move my body and control my limbs. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what does it mean to be graceful? How do you teach being graceful? How do people look? Why do people look graceful? You know, what does it even mean? And I think I want to share with you today what I think about being graceful. So I think the biggest thing that makes someone look graceful is how isolated their body is. What I mean by this is if you think about, let's just talk about moving our hand. I'll go through a couple of examples, but I want to talk about moving my hand. So if I think about moving my hand as a chain reaction from my shoulder and my hand drifts behind slowly and softly, it sort of is a chain reaction to the movement of my tricep. But if I think about moving my hand through space, it may not have as graceful of a feeling. It might seem very connected and stiff, as opposed to letting the motions happen in an isolated way. So that the hand is not sort of in charge of the movement, but the movement is coming from more in the core of the body, and the hand is an afterthought. Another example of this isolated motion is being able to move your limbs without your body moving with it. So as an example, if I move my legs, if I'm walking and everything is stiff and my body is moving with me and I'm kind of like I'm on stilts walking around, then I don't look very graceful. My legs are not very isolated from my body. But if my legs can move completely independently from my upper body, then I might look more graceful because I almost look like I'm floating around, and it looks more effortless because only part of my body is doing the work. Things that look like they have effort are when if you needed to jump, if you used all of your might, it looked like it was really hard. But if you just stand still and pop up into the air, it might look easier. And when things look easy, I think maybe that's what it means to look more graceful. If it looks like only one part of your body was needed to cause that action, maybe it looks more graceful. So that separation of the body can help look more graceful. I think one last thing really helps this look of fluidity in the motion. And that is that the body, as the, kind of combining those two things together, as the isolation works, how your limbs move together. So it's a little bit about what I talked about in the beginning. So it's that coordination in addition to combining the isolation and the chain reaction of the body. So the coordination would be like if I move one hand and then the other, I would want them to sort of move at the same time, or at least look like they were moving in the same manner. As opposed to if one part looks stiff and the other part looks fluid, it might look really choppy and not as fluid or graceful. So as you're thinking about coordinating, thinking about arms and legs moving together, that will look more graceful than if they look choppy where the leg goes and then the arm goes afterwards. So you want that the fluidity of the motion of the joints, thinking about really moving from the core and the limbs moving as an afterthought as opposed to being stuck and stiff. That is sort of the isolation aspect, so moving things separately, moving joints individually, as opposed to sticking like very stuck in the mud and stiff and moving kind of robotically. You want things to move separately but coordinated together. So while the joints are isolated, they're coordinated so that they move at the same time, like in a wave or in a fluid manner, as opposed to like isolated but then moving in a choppy manner. So we've got the fluidity, the isolation, and kind of moving from the center of the body. So a couple of things that can help you find and achieve this gracefulness. Honestly, it's a skill just like everything else. Moving in a fluid way, coordinating your limbs, coordinating your muscles, all of these are skills and things that you can practice and work on, and over time will continue to improve. I think watching things really helps, watching and studying the fluidity. So watch a bunch of ballet videos, watch your teacher, watch other people in class, watch people who you think are graceful and people who you think aren't so graceful, and see why they're different. So try to really study the movement patterns and what's going on with these two different looks and see what looks graceful to you. Then trying to mimic that is really important. So trying to mimic the fluidity. So let's say if something takes 4 counts, you want the arm to be moving for all 4 counts, as opposed to like arriving on 2 and then everything else needs to wait. So using the music to help you kind of mimic the fluidity of people who you might be watching. The second big thing I want you to think about is isolating your body. So I learned this actually when I took jazz class in college. That was when I kind of learned this concept, is like isolating both your pelvis and your rib cage. So the exercise that we would do, and if you've taken a jazz class before, you've probably seen this, maybe even contemporary, because these need a lot of isolation. You start with your legs a little bit wider than hip width. I've always been taught to just sort of set my hands on my hip bones to kind of feel how my hips are staying still. And then try to isolate your rib cage like it's moving on a shelf. So really just moving the rib cage side to side and not letting your whole body shift side to side. So separating the body into different pieces and really letting the top half move separately from the bottom half. You want this to be able to move in all directions, front and back, and maybe even a circle, so that you can develop the coordination of all those muscles in your body to move separately from each other. Same thing with the hips. You want to be able to move your hips without everything coming with. So this doesn't look as fluid as maybe just moving the hips by themselves. So you want to be able to move the hips completely independently. This goes for your posture as well. So if I turn to the side, a lot of dancers will come in with a little bit of an extra low back curve. So when we tell them to move the low back under, a lot of times because the body is really stiff, the rest of the body will change. But what we want to do is be able to isolate the movement of the pelvis completely separate from the upper body, so that you can think about lifting your shoulders and your spine off of your lower half of your body and move the pelvis independently without affecting the rib cage. We don't want this moving the pelvis to affect the upper body. So you want all of that to move independently from each other without the upper body being a part of it. So to work on posture a little bit, you would think about tucking your pelvis all the way under and then lifting your rib cage up off of your body. So you've got the pelvis under and the rib cage lifted. And those are two separate motions that don't affect each other. So you practice the isolation of the body. This isolation comes in handy when you're doing stuff like balancing. So let's say you're going for a balance at the bar. Let's say this arm is side and you're going to bring them both down and up. If your shoulders are not isolated and you throw yourself back because your shoulders are tight, then you're going to fall off your balance. But if you can move your arms without affecting your body, then you can stay up there because you have this, your center of gravity is all in one piece, and the arms can move around. Same thing goes for turning or jumping or anything like that. You want the center to stay still while we isolate the motion of the legs and the upper body, of the arms. So that separation of the body, the ability to control one part and move only one other part, is huge when it comes to looking effortless and looking graceful. So to summarize, if you want to look graceful, you want to work on the isolation of your body, moving one part without moving the others. Then you want to think about where the movement comes from, thinking about moving from the core of your body and not moving from your extremities. So we're moving from the inside of the body and the extremities are coming along as opposed to moving the hands or moving the feet. They're just sort of in attachment on the limbs and going along for the ride. And then you want to coordinate all of this together. So while we're isolated, we then don't want it to be choppy. We want it to be fluid moving together so that we're isolated, but it's fluid. Once you can master those concepts, remember those are all really big and difficult concepts that you have to practice. Once you can master those concepts, you'll start being able to apply this to different areas of your dancing and your life, your posture, your walking, all of that to look more graceful. Your movements will look more effortless. It will look like you're moving without really putting any work with your body, which can have that very graceful and sort of like floating or ethereal quality where it looks like you're moving in a sort of inhuman or above human kind of a manner. Well, dancers, I hope this helps you figure out how to be more graceful in your dancing and in your life. Until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It really does help us out. Take care.